name is Amber Tillman, and this is my critical assignment presentation on the legal issues and kinesiology. Today I'm going to be going over my chosen facility and the risk management and legal employment laws that go with my facility, and then I'm going to integrate my faith, and I'm going to talk about what I've learned from this course and how I'm going to apply it in my chosen career. So the facility that I chose is going to be with the University Athletic Department, but I'm going to be focusing more on the Aquatic Center because for my chosen career, I want to be the head swim coach at a university. I am already a head swim coach for a high school team that I coach in Riverside, and the picture is actually the facility that I work for the school. The reason why I want to become a collegiate head swim coach is because, yeah, I'm already coaching for high school, but I want to further my capabilities, and through my experience, I think I can help more at a collegiate level because I've been a competitive swimmer for 14 years. I've been coaching for 6 years now. So I just want to further my experience with coaching at a higher level than high school. So, risk management at a pool level, there are so many risks that can go on at a pool, especially when you are coaching. There are risks such as damages to the pool facility, chemical injuries because of all the different chemicals that have to go into the pool in order for it to be balanced and for people to swim into it. And the number one issue that pools have are drownings. So, damages to the pool facility can happen very often. Usually for me, when I go into work in the morning, I have to check all the equipment before I can let anybody swim. Because if somebody were to get hurt, I would be in trouble and the school would be in trouble because we were neglectful to checking the pool facility. So every morning, before the school starts, I would go into work and make sure the pool's okay, the chemicals are balanced, all the equipment is good to go. There was one time when I went into the pool and we have blinds to make it brighter in the room since the pool doesn't have lights, and the blinds were broken, so we couldn't have anybody swim because the blinds were broken. But because of my due diligence and checking the facility for damages, we were able to prevent injury by me reporting the blinds. But unfortunately, in the case of Marcotti Taylor v. Minneapolis Golf Club, unfortunately there's an uncovered pool drain, and the wading pool for that pool was very cloudy, and a 6-year-old girl sat on the covered drain, and the powerful suction took out 21 feet of her small intestines, and she unfortunately died from her injuries. This is one of the reasons why it's very important to make sure you check for damaged equipment, because something just like what happened with the case of Taylor versus the Minneapolis Golf Club, someone unfortunately died from it. And Spangler explains that it is important to follow state and federal laws that dictate the standard of care for these facilities. So it's important to make sure that your facility is up to code, so then situations like what happened with this case does not happen. Another risk is chemical injuries. A lot of chemicals go into the pool. When I go into to my job in the morning, I have to check the balance of chlorine and the pH in the pool. With high pH and high chlorine, it could be very bad for people. With high chlorine, people start to get lightheaded and they start coughing because it affects their respiratory system. Anytime the pH is low or high, you're going to get red eyes, which is why some people, when you're in a chlorinated pool, you get red eyes. That's because the pH is off. So it's important to make sure the pool chemicals are balanced before you let anybody in the pool. As you can see in the picture, a pool should not look like that. It should not look cloudy and dirty like that. It should be a nice clear blue like it's supposed to be, and that's how you know. That's one indicator that you know that the chemicals are unbalanced, is if your pool is cloudy. And in the case of Louisville SW Hotel versus Lindsay, the hotel violated their chemical testing procedures when a child drowned in a cloudy pool, and they actually had a hard time finding his body because the pool was so cloudy. So making sure you have a balance of chemicals in your pool is very important, so we can prevent injuries and deaths, just like the case that I just stated. And Spangler explains that it's important for supervisors to follow a standard of care to understand what others in the community require for a safety plan at their facility. So it's important to understand what your chemicals are supposed to be balanced at. So for our pool, it's better to have them in the middle than to have them off. So it's important to look at those guidelines before opening your facility up for people to swim. And drownings is one of the leading causes of deaths in many pools, and they can be 100% preventable with a lifeguard or a guardian. So as a coach myself, I have to be trained and certified lifeguard and CPR in order to become a coach. And unfortunately, in the case of Mosier and Parsons, a 3.5-year-old died by drowning in a swimming pool because there was a lack of supervision. So, according to Spangler, it's important to have those rules and regulations, such as having numerous lifeguards and supervisions at the pool to prevent a negligence lawsuit to provide that standard of care. So, it's important to make sure everybody is certified before hiring as a coach, so then that way we can prevent death and injuries just like drownings, because they are very unfortunate. There are other things that we have to follow, which are employment laws, because a pool may not seem like business, but it actually is, because you're a business along with the school, so you have to uphold the same laws as businesses do for employment laws. And there are some employment issues that can include firing, discrimination, and accusations of unequal pay. So when it comes to firing, like I have an assistant coach because you can't take all of that work as a head coach all on your own. So it is important to have a team in order to coach. And you have to make sure that you're following the rules of recruiting, because recruiting, you're not supposed, if as a university, you are not supposed to recruit from high school. So like giving them money or giving them special perks, you can't do that at all as a coach. But in the case of O'Brien versus Ohio State, O'Brien was fired from his position as an assistant coach by loaning a recruit money in 1988, but he did not disclose this information until 2004, so the school fired him for breach of contract. But because the university did not follow the steps for the hiring process, it was found that O'Brien did not breach his contract. So it's important that when you have a contract, it spells out your rights and responsibilities of both parties, and it has to cover when and why an employee might be terminated. So in his contract, he actually did not, what he did was wrong, but because the school didn't follow the necessary firing protocol by notifying the CIF, they were the ones that were in the wrong because they fired him prematurely. So it's important to make sure you have your ducks in a row when it comes to firing an employee. Discrimination happens, and it does happen in sports. I mean, sports for coaching, it's predominantly white males. And there are women coaches like myself, African American coaches, but it is very little. And we are getting better, but we do have room for improvement. And in the case of Sawyers v. the Regents of University of California, he claimed that he was being discriminated against at work, and he believed that he was being retaliated against as well, but he was not able to prove his case. But in the case, he was actually not qualified for the job that he had. So that is why he was demoted from being an AD for certain events, and he got those taken away from him. So it's important to make sure that decisions on hiring and promotion and retention are based solely on job qualifications, because it is very important to make sure that people are qualified for the job that they're being hired for. Equal pay happens as well. It happens in many businesses between men and women. Actually, the United States women's national soccer team just happened. They sued the United States Soccer Federation because they felt that they weren't paid equally. But the court ended up declining their offer because they were offered more money, but they felt like they should get even more money than the men's, and that kind of ruined their case. So parties should be paid equal pay for equal work that requires equal skill level. So it's important to remember that, like for me, at my job, I get paid more than a teacher's assistant because of my added qualifications as a lifeguard. So if you do have the same qualifications, you should get equal pay. But if you have that added credential, then that's when you do get paid more. Faith integration, so how God's word can guide someone in a managerial position, the way that they treat their employees, as well as how you interpret legal precedents. So in John 21:19 through 23, Jesus wanted Peter to follow him, but then he said, well, what about him? Well, when it comes to being a manager, you want to make sure that your employees do their job and don't delegate their job to others. So in this Bible reference, he shouldn't be worrying about the other disciple. He should be worrying about himself and what Jesus told him to do. So he shouldn't be delegating his job to others. In Luke 15:28 through 30, he was angry because his father only gave him a young calf, but he gave his brother who did wrong a more fattened calf. So you want to make sure that you treat your employees equally, especially if they do the same amount of work. So make sure you treat your employees equally and don't single somebody out just because they might have done better work. If they did the same work, then they should be treated equally and rewarded equally. And finally, in Genesis 2 is when God told Adam and Eve not to eat from the tree in the garden or else they will die. You want to make sure that your instructions are specific to what you want, because some people can interpret things differently. So make sure your instructions are very specific for what could happen in the end. There is a separation between church and state, so because I work in the school, I am not to talk about God to the children there at the school. So there is a separation, and we can't preach the word of God at schools. So a decision that is in line with my personal beliefs but may be illegal would be communion. So let's say if I have a sporting event on Sunday, but I have communion that same day, technically I'm drinking alcohol, and I'm not allowed to have alcohol for my job because that is illegal. I'm not supposed to be under the influence. So that there, I would have to get my assistant coach to take over for me because technically I'm under the influence. So that's how something like that could be illegal. I really, really enjoy this class. I love this class so much. I'm really into law and everything. You do really have to have common sense. So if someone hits their head and they feel dizzy, they might have a concussion. So you don't tell them to go out there and keep playing. You have to make sure you follow the safety precautions in order to make sure everybody is safe. You have to also make sure you follow the laws to a T to avoid lawsuits, like the many lawsuits that we read in this class. They didn't follow their own rules, so you got to make sure you follow their own rules. So I'm going to be using many of the things that we learned in this class for my job. So that was my presentation. Here are my references. I hope you enjoyed watching, and thank you so much.